Hi everyone, Scrappy Kathy here with a post-Christmas edition of Mixed Media Frenzy, and this one's going to be a little bit different. Our sketch today is this, and what I'm seeing here are this strong horizontal band that pretty much contains the photos. Lots of texture created by maybe different colors of ink or paint, some kind of streaky elements here, and some big splotchy elements all around. So I'm going to kind of put that aside and show you something I've been playing with. First of all, building this layout is going to be entirely mixed media, and then I'm going to put a couple photos on top of it. So I'm not going to do, there are no pattern papers, there's nothing but this sheet of black cardstock and the white cardstock that's behind these photos. And the rest of it is I've got some stamps and some embossing powders. And then what kind of drove me to this technique, I saw the texture created by the different colors and different layers. And that reminded me of this Frontage encrusted jewel kit by Stampendous that I bought when I saw some reference to one of the elements. I think the element was, well, we'll see. I'll open it up and we'll kind of look at what's in it. There is this stuff right here. It's called shaved ice fragments. I'll put that right there so it's still in camera range. This is these are little shavings of white mica. This is a crystal embossing powder. It dries clear. This is a multi-crystal glitter mix, and this is a chunky white embossing powder that's very thick. I kind of played with the idea of doing this on black cardstock yesterday, and this is kind of my test piece. There are several things. I'm not going to go through it all with you, but you can kind of see up here what the crystal embossing powder did. I kind of sprinkled that lightly on the borders. I took my Versamark pad and just kind of lightly ran it across my page so that the powders would sort of stick, because I'm going to have to do the heating from underneath, and so I wanted things to kind of hold. And basically the principles are everything but the thick embossing powder and the crystal embossing powder. These three elements here, the mica, the shaved ice, and the glitter mix, are elements that don't stick, so they kind of have to be anchored and made to stick to your project by the embossing powders that will be, when heated from underneath, will form a base into which those guys can kind of melt. And you may notice that right here I've got some kind of unattractive clumps of the mica flakes. So my conclusion there is, and by the way, until yesterday I had never used this. I've owned it for maybe 5 years. So my conclusion here is I need to take a lighter hand and maybe sprinkle the mica flakes by hand. There are some areas where the embossing powder, the chunky embossing powder, kind of got out at the edges and kind of melted into dots where the black shows through, and I like those better than the big clunky areas. But if I want to kind of add some splotchiness, I can have larger, thicker chunks of the embossing powder, and when I dry it, it will, but I need to do it in small pieces instead of across the entire band. So with those observations, I'm going to, and these things that look pink here, those are the shaved ice. What it looks like, and as you can see, some bits are kind of breaking off. So I'm hoping not to have that problem. So let's go with my plan for this page. I'll move these things off now, and knowing that these things, I've got some glitter, some extra fine glitter in a few colors, and I've got some embossing powder. This is a worn lipstick distress embossing powder, and this is a combination of a red and distress, that may be barn door or something like that, and there are some copper glitter bits in there. So I don't know if I want to add color or if I want it all white, but these options are available. So these are, let's get this up a little bit. These pieces, these things over here, these bottles over here are my additions, and these are my sticky things. I've got my Ken Oliver mat, which is not bothered by heat. I've got a couple stamp sets. This one is a Kaisercraft stamp set. I saw someone use this on a boy layout, and it certainly has some boy-themed kinds of stamps. And I just love this. This is I actually bought that to make a card for my husband, who is a computer geek. And this is like circuitry, and he's raising his hand. Okay. This is a stamp set that I had never seen. It's called Trendy Circles by Altenew. And my friend Liz Ketter had an extra one. She got a couple in a couple different kits, and she sent this one to me, and I absolutely love it. Haven't used it, but I thought these kind of partial circles there would be good, and I think my title is going to be this, Be Happy, Be Bright, Be You. I guess I'll put that up into camera range. Let me move the camera back down where you can see where I'll be working. So the first thing, I kind of debated with myself over the order that I need to do things. First thing I think I'm going to do is the stamping. I'm going to let my horizontal band be 2 swatches of this. I'm going to rub that across twice, but I'm not going to do it now. I don't want it to dry before I put the embossing powder on it. So I'm just going to kind of mark, let me see if I can get a white pen and maybe mark the areas. I'm not really doing well accessing my white pens because all of the things I normally need, which are my embellishment tray and my paper trimmer, I don't need, so they're sitting on top of where I store my pens, and I'm having trouble finding it because I actually last week used I used up 2 of my white pens. So I'm going to use this paint marker, and it doesn't have to be really precise, and it isn't marking, but it's going to be good enough for me to see where I need to do my stamping. That's not doing anything. Okay. We'll just wing it, right? The first thing I want to do is kind of over to the right here, up up in this area, the upper right of the horizontal band. I'd like to do these gears, and again, never opened this package before, so peeling the stamps off of the acrylic is not easy. There's no sorry that you have to do. That's not something I thought I'd use a lot of time for, and it's the stamp's a little bit bigger than my block here, but that's not really going to bother me. When stamping on a mixed media project, I'm not really going for a perfect image like I would be on a card. I'm kind of going for an impression, if you will. And I'm going to let this bottom kind of overhangy part go in the area that's going to be embossed. And I'll kind of do it that way. And I'm planning to emboss that in white. Not the crystal. Well, actually, here's where I may, let's do, would have been nice to play this. Let's do the crystal, just so that it really does have that look of just an impression. So this is going to dry clear. I'm going to do this. Okay. And I'm going to put this on this tray. Okay, and again, I'm not really going to worry a whole lot about, so you can kind of see how that turned out. That's pretty cool. Now I'm going to use this stamp again, kind of down, and it's going to be under. It may get mostly covered up, but I want it to live here. And here I may do a color because I'm planning to do some white splotches, and I want to do it this way. This is the bottom of that. Let me go here. There. And I'm going to do this pink embossing powder. I'm going to do it over the same tray. I'm trying to kind of move things around so that what I'm doing is on camera. This is going to be a lot, whereas the lines are kind of fine up there, these are going to be a little thicker because it's that distress powder. So I'm going to kind of do that. Okay, now I'm going to use one of these circles on my same block. I'll clean that ink off in a minute. I thought this circle could maybe, if I pull my pictures over here, they're going to sit kind of somewhere here. And I'm going to have create some white splotches there, and maybe some of the reddish splotches over there. Let me see. I think I'd like for this to be like that up in that corner, maybe more like this, because I'll have some splotches around. So let me get some ink on here. And I'll kind of overlap the what's going to be that central band. And I'm going to actually heat the embossing powder this one I think I'll use the chunky white. And let me get this back here. You may be able to tell that what I'm going to do here on this tray is blend all these together into a new color, which is something I kind of like doing, because you can always buy the pure colors again, but you may be able, oh, okay, see, that didn't stick. My ink didn't stick, but that's okay. I'm going to kind of just lightly tap it down to encourage the adhesion there. And a little bit more did stick, but that's okay. See, that's going to leave that kind of dotty sort of look that I like. Okay, now I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to do another one of these stamps. I was thinking of using this kind of crisscross one, sort of down in this area, maybe kind of overlapping that way, and we'll see how that works. And I will use the red. Let's see. My watermark, my Versamark pad isn't as juicy as it should be. So I may do this like this, and then maybe again like that, and again like this, with the secondary and tertiary stamping expected to have less and less detail as we go along. Okay, so that's good. Where's the lid to my Versamark so it doesn't dry out even more? I have some re-inker for that, so I'll use that. Now I'm going to move this back. And do this. Ooh, okay. I'm not being as precise about brushing this away as I might otherwise, because it's messy mixed media that isn't necessarily supposed to be perfect. So I'm going to now add a little bit of color to this one and to this one. just kind of, let me see if I can dust that very lightly. Not really gonna do that. Let me try to even that out a bit with the pink, and then I'll brush that off. Okay, let me leave it at that. I'm kind of going, I keep getting these ideas and I want to try them all out on this one piece, and that may not be the best approach. Let me pull this guy back, and this will be my, okay, so a lot of the red and pink stayed here, almost none here. So let me just kind of sprinkle some. And where it goes into the edges up here is where the design details will be kind of a little bit messed up. Another thing I'm going to do just now is just to scatter a few of these things, and I could do this more towards the end, and this is going to require me to hold this very carefully, which I'm going to do now, and you're going to have to endure the sound of my heating tool. I'm going to heat from underneath. I'm heating underneath those circles right now, and it's not quite doing much. I'm going to kind of get as many of those little dotty things as possible to heat up. Because they're individual dots, they'll heat and melt pretty quickly, and that keeps them from moving around. So hopefully you're able to see something happening. The color is changing on the interlocking circles there, and some of the see if you can tell that there's some melting in that. Let's go over to this white see how much detail gets preserved. You can kind of see as it's turning more clear and less white, you're seeing the melting occur. Let me try to get that on camera, but also tilt my head so that I can see. I'm trying to get this upper right corner of it, and I'm a little afraid to hold the heating tool too close to the paper. You can see it changing now, and it's really beautiful. Now on these stamped images, I did not add any of the mica or glitter elements. There's some of the embossing powders are glittery. Okay, so that one is done, and you can kind of see how the red powders are kind of showing through. Let's work on this guy right here, and this is done in the chunky white glitter, not the clear, or the chunky white embossing powder, not the clear. So we should get those kind of melty dots that were in the practice piece. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add those elements. I told you I didn't do that to the stamped images. When I bring the embossing powder pad across and make my strong horizontal line, you'll see me adding pretty much all of those encrusted elements. Now, my one problem, I love the distress glitter, but my big problem with it is it's not as easy to tell because it has kind of a rough sandy finish. It's not, instead of a smooth shiny finish when it melts, it's not as easy to tell that you've heated it enough. So let me, I think I can see a piece there. As I said, we don't have the fine detail here anyway because of where it's kind of turning white. I'm thinking that's where it's melted. It's looking white on camera. It doesn't look white in person, but that's the way the light hits it on camera. You actually can see. So maybe I just need to melt it on camera. There's still some stubborn spots that aren't melting. Up in this corner, I haven't quite got it to change. I don't want to hold it too close. Yesterday, when I was kind of in the middle, I was trying to melt a particularly thick pile of the chunky white glitter, chunky white embossing powder, embossing enamel, and I held it there so long that it kind of burned. There was a little bit of smoke, so I figured that's probably not safe. One doesn't want to set the house on fire while crafting. So I'm kind of getting it there and moving on down. Come on, let's do this. I'm going to give up on that for just for the moment. I should actually keep the heat applied there, but I'm noticing some of the little white bits moving around, and I really don't want them to. So I'm going to go up here and melt them. And then I'll come back and try not to burn the paper from underneath. So I'm getting this stubborn little spot right here. Burn. I swear the heat is right under it. Okay, I'm sure this is literally and figuratively like watching paint dry. You're watching enamel melt. And probably not the most fascinating thing on camera, but I didn't know any other way to do it. I could, if I were a better video editor, kind of show you how I poured it out and told you what I was planning to do, and then cut out the long part where I'm actually doing it. So what I'm doing now is actually for the white spots that hadn't melted from underneath, I'm probably blowing them off the page, and that's why you heat from underneath. I've blown some into this, and that's not bothering me. So I just want to be sure that what's left on the paper is melted down onto the surface so that when I put my, when I do my horizontal streak to do the rest. Okay, let's stop that for the moment, and I can maybe go back and do some of that, some touching up on that later. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is, this is my horizontal border. It looks vertical now because I turned the page. I'm going to kind of just rub this across, and because those things are melted, some of them melted not as well as I would have thought, but again, not a big problem since this is messy mixed media and not a perfect card that, okay, so let me do that. And now I'm going to start I'm going to use this crystal clear. I'm going to start adding the embossing powders, which will glue everything else down. And this is the clear crystal, which isn't going to give us that kind of thick, heavy look like I got yesterday. Now, I've got this thing, don't know when I got it or where I got it or what I got it for, but it works nicely to distribute things kind of lightly. I may wish that I had now, down in here, in this area, I kind of want a big white, what looks like a paint splotch. So I think a pile there, and maybe a pile, let's see, let me just briefly measure where the photo is going to go. The photo will go there. So I'll maybe put my pile of stuff right there, and then I'll do another one over here. Okay, that's my white pile of stuff. Let me do some of this shaved ice, and that I think kind of isn't a problem the way that it gets distributed. I can probably kind of rake it along. I don't want to put a whole lot, waste my product in an area that I know is going to be covered up. Let me add, I really don't want it up there because that's already been dried. I kind of want to put it where there is embossing powder, and I'm kind of redistributing it here because I don't want that so much in streaks, although there are some streaks in the original. Okay, the mica flakes I'm going to do with my fingers. I'm going to pour a little into this lid and then kind of almost put them where I want them to be. I'd like a couple up here, couple down here. They will tend to kind of stand up and show themselves. And I'm going to, I don't want to completely obliterate this circle. I'm going to leave a few of these things out and around. And now I'm going to do a little bit of this glitter kind of sprinkled about. Let me do a little bit of the blue. I don't, let me try the shaker. I think I haven't taken the lid off that. Let me put a little bit of blue glitter, maybe some in that white paint splotch or near it. Okay, that's enough. And I'm gonna see, well, the reason I have this Dylusions white paint and my paintbrush is so that I can go over it and create some dry brush looks if I'm not entirely satisfied with going live with the embossing. Okay, now this is going to take forever. So I'm going to do this off camera. I'm going to also off camera, let me kind of tell you this without this. Also off camera, I will place the photo kind of right there, and I will stamp the sentiment, which will be the title, somewhere in an open field. It may end up being kind of right over here or maybe right up there. We'll see when the time comes. But basically, I've played with embossing powders and glitters and other elements that can be melted down into embossing powder. And as I'm sure you all know, once you've got the elements on top of the embossing powder, you can wait. You don't have to melt it right away. So I'm going for a really messy look with splotches and splatters all over the page. I'm going to try to make sure that I have some of this streaky element there and make sure I have that strong horizontal line there. So those are kind of my biggies, and I hope you get out there and open up your embossing powders and do something new with them. So have a great mixed media frenzy today, and happy Friday. Bye.